This is episode 19 in a series entitled Spiritual Lessons from the Wright Brothers. What a fun series this has been. And the profundity that you can take these two men's lives and just watch them, just sort of set them in front of us, and you can see so much of the kingdom of heaven revealed in and through the playing out of men's lives. Isn't that just an incredible thought, just in light of how the gospel works, where we stare at Jesus, we stare at the Word of God in text, in person, in action at the cross, and we behold the glory of an unseen realm. And then you take just these samplings, like whether it's the Wright Brothers or someone else, that are desirous to live different than the world around them. And when you watch, you're actually able to see a revelation of an invisible kingdom. It is actually rather profound that can happen. I mean, there's so many things, like just the message today, which is, it's startling almost of how it parallels with the story of the gospel itself. And so we're right at a point in technically 1904, I would say is probably the best place to put this, even though the key event is going to be in January of 1905. So we need to recognize that it's 1903 that the event that most of us are aware of, and that is mechanized, human-controlled flight, is officially discovered by the Wright Brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. So now the Wright Brothers have come home to Dayton, and they are attempting to master flight, motorized, mechanical flight, but without the aid of Kitty Hawk winds. And so this has been a whole new study. It's almost like they felt like they were starting over in 1904. And of course, this is when they come home after doing this grand event, grand achievement in Kitty Hawk. Now they can't seem to prove to anyone that they have any ability to fly. And so the mockery is beginning to come in. Everyone totally ignores them. No one even continues to show up and watch. And meanwhile, they know they have something, but they just have to prove it. And so this is a proving season in each of our lives where, in the last message, I talked about many of us, our initial motivation, which we called in the last message a first wind, which is the cheers of men, the applause of men, the good opinion of men is what moves us. But oftentimes God has to bring us to the point where he says, are you willing to do this for a higher purpose? Even if men don't care, even if men don't applaud. That's a really hard place to come to. That's a hard transition, and that's where you're going to see the Wright Brothers migrating from a first wind to a second wind. Something greater to motivate them than just human applause and good opinion of men, because the good opinion of Dayton at this point is lost, and they are doing something for a higher purpose now. And so we're sort of at that zone of the story, which is actually, it's a funny thing to say, sort of the part of the story that I relate to the most is the part that they're in now, where you've accomplished something in your life, you know it's real. However, the world around you is questioning your integrity, what you're intending to do, your motives, and you just desire to show that this actually works. Like as a Christian, it's like I desire the world to see that God actually does save. That he doesn't just save us in an eternal sense, he saves us now. That he desires to remodel our life and to empower our life to live a life that otherwise would be impossible. And yet you oftentimes will go through a Huffman Prairie season where you feel like your voice actually is being belittled instead of understood. That your grand desire to change the world seems like it's not making a bit of difference. So here we are with what I'm calling the big announcement. Huge moment in the storyline is when flight is going to be officially discovered. Now, it already was discovered on December 17th, 1903. It's not that I'm going to diminish that date. However, in September of 1904, the Wright brothers are going to have a breakthrough that is so much more significant than the previous. And it is being done in Huffman Prairie. And it is an entire full circle where a plane can literally take off, turn around in an entire circle, and then land. This is unheard of. The only thing that could possibly ever do that would be like a balloon. And this is the first time that a human-mechanized, human-controlled flying machine could do this. This is sort of the breakthrough moment, the moment that they've been waiting for, that could sort of show that means it could go wherever, come back and land at the same place. It's like, that's human-controlled flight. That's not just randomly shooting off into the distance. That means you could control it. That means you could take off, you could steer it, and you could land it. This is the moment in September of 1904. And I'm going to call it the big announcement. Okay, if you would accomplish this, how would you want to make it known? So, I don't know why. It looks like there's a period after the there. Isn't that something like that really bother you? It bothers me. But you guys need to ignore that period. The language of heaven. So I've jokingly brought this up over time, more as a statement to sort of subtly mock the ridiculous nature of division in the Church of Jesus Christ, that people actually argue about what the language is that is going to be spoken in heaven. Okay, believe me, this is another debate point that people have. And so Hebrew is one of the key arguments because that's God's native tongue, especially the Jews would say. That's God's native tongue. And it really is a brilliant language. I'm not going to argue. And it would make sense. I'm not even going to argue that. However, the Koine Greek is going to reveal the higher revelation. And so I think it's reasonable that you could argue, and people do, that the Koine Greek would be the native tongue of heaven. So when we all get there, we're going to need to learn Koine Greek, right? And because obviously we need to speak one language when we get there. So which one is it going to be? And then, of course, you have the person who thinks it's going to be English, and that offends quite a few people around the world. But those of us that speak it, you have to admit that would be very convenient for us. So here's what I'm going to say. This is going to be my official announcement on the topic. I don't care technically. I don't know officially when we talk about human language, but I want to answer the question in a very different way than anyone would expect. Because actually I do know something about the language of heaven. It's just I don't know if it's going to be Hebrew, Koine Greek, or English. The language of heaven is humility. If there is one thing that can be known about heaven, it's that when it speaks, when it makes its messages known, it always speaks it in the language of humility. Which is why anyone who is going to enter in and participate in this kingdom, they don't need to speak Hebrew, they don't need to speak Koine Greek, they don't need to speak English, they need to speak humility. That is the language of heaven. I've oftentimes described the ivory wall. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard me describe the ivory wall. And it's thick and it's high and it's impenetrable. There's no way to get through it. But on the other side is the kingdom of heaven. And here we are on the wrong side. And so the moment you think that you're going to scale it, I need to tell you that it goes like 10 billion miles up. You're like, oh, wow, that's pretty high. I go, yeah. And so then the moment you think you're going to go to the right and go around it, I'm going to have to say, yeah, it goes 10 billion miles that way. And then you're like, well, I'll go to the left. Oh, well, it goes 10 billion miles that way too. And they go, okay, I'm going to dig underneath. Well, did I tell you that it goes 10 billion miles into the dirt? It's pretty deep. In other words, it's impassable. I'm trying to give as extreme of a statement as I can to let you know there's no way over it, under it, around it. But did I mention that there's this like little entry, this little hole, right where the ivory wall meets the dirt? And it's just big enough that if you strip everything off yourself and you get on your face, you can wiggle your way in. That the entrance into this grand kingdom is singular, and that is through humility. You have to humble yourself to enter in. Philippians 2, 5 through 8. Now, I know you've heard this before, but I want you to recognize this is the language of heaven. God is making himself known. He is speaking to us through his word. What do we see in that word? Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. So when God is speaking to us, when he is revealing to us his word, this is what we see. A humbling, even to the point of death. That is a remarkable form of communication, startling. We are so used to it, we grow up around it, that we don't often take note of it, that is how God speaks. This is how God reveals. It is in and through this deep humility, in and through weakness, that he actually makes known his great strength. So this quote, he humbled himself and became obedient. What a startling statement. He, speaking of God Almighty, all heaven, the fullness of the life of God, is going to humble himself and become obedient. So if God were going to climb into a man's body, what would God do? We actually know the answer to that. But what an interesting statement. It's sort of like, okay, if we're going to take all of heaven, remember all that we can't see, it's all invisible, and we were going to cram it into a human body so that we could see it, so that we could finally understand it, what would it look like? It would look like Philippians chapter 2. And that actually should startle us, because that isn't what we look like. In our native sense, that is not how we are. That is not the language that we naturally speak, because something is different about us. Something has gone off in us, which is what he has come to fix. So when he fixes us, just to prepare you, he makes us like himself, which is one who speaks the language of heaven, which I've already forewarned you, is the language of humility. That is what he is wanting to cultivate and train us in. The bewildering pattern. Here it is, guys. You ready for this? Strength is found in weakness. Now, that doesn't make any sense to our brain. That the servant or the lowest of all is the greatest of all. That when we are weak, his strength is made perfect. It's like, excuse me, but that is backwards. It's upside down. In fact, most people throughout Christian history have called the kingdom of heaven the upside down kingdom. Now, technically, the kingdom of heaven is right side up. We're the ones that are upside down. But to us, since we are upside down, it appears that the kingdom of heaven is upside down. And that's the way the natural man appropriates it. But the upside down kingdom, which is the kingdom of heaven, which is really right side up, is actually the way it is supposed to be. And that is that when we are weak, when we understand our weakness, like for instance, if you think of yourself as all that, if you have a high opinion of yourself, if you don't acknowledge that you are sick, you can't be made whole and healthy by the great physician. It's until you can acknowledge in your inner man that you actually have need, that you actually can't do what God has assigned you to do, that you actually are unholy, that you actually are marred by sin. It's until you accept the weakness that you are in, you cannot find the strength that he has to offer. Weakness is the channel through which he reveals himself to us. And so he will allow us to be brought into weak places. He will allow us to be weakened so that he can freshly reveal to us his strength. So that he can freshly reveal through us to a watching world his strength. Psalm 8:2. Now there's a whole bunch in the Bible that says this. It's just a few of the passages that say it in a beautiful, unusual way. Out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants, you have ordained strength. So what is that saying? Out of the weakest things in the world, you have ordained, you have planned to reveal your strength. That's an incredible statement. Out of the weakest things in the world, babes, nursing infants Okay, I could say, any questions? That's the weakest. And out of these weakest places, God has decided ahead of time. It's through that I will reveal my strength. 2 Corinthians, I have no idea why I'm missing the reference here, and I'm not going to just hazard a quick guess at it, but so sorry about that. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not of us. God has purposely given us earthen vessels. He hasn't given us our second body, which is, I'm guessing, going to be quite amazing. But he has allowed us to maintain a first body so that it would be realized that the power we are living out is not a power of our own. It's his power. He has chosen a weak thing through which to reveal his strength. We oftentimes grumble about that. It's like, God, you could have thought this through. Why are you allowing me to be so weak? So that I can reveal my strength. Gideon's 300. Now, Gideon started with 30,000 men, which you could say, now that sounds a lot better. Yeah, but he's still up against, I think it was 215,000. Okay, you get the idea? That's still statistically not good. And God is going to purposely weaken, if you could say it that way, Gideon's army down to 300. Why? So that everyone would know that the power was of God, not of Gideon. Weaken us to the point, there's a certain threshold where we need to get under, to the point where we know and everyone else knows this wasn't us, this was God. So when he is allowing us to be weakened, how do we respond? Do we recognize the pattern? Do we recognize that when we are weakened, it is in order that his strength could be made perfect, could showcase itself in and through that situation? Esther, in the book of Esther, it's a remarkable story, guys. It's one of my favorite in the Bible, technically, that Esther is going to be God's chosen vessel to save a nation. Could you imagine just the notion of that? It's like this woman it all rests on that and her obedience. And so out of that, just like Gideon's army, God is going to literally save an entire people group. Paul's thorn. This is a weakness, and he is even going to describe it that way. And yet God is going to say, my grace is sufficient for you, Paul. Right now, in this exact state that you're in, with whatever this pain is in your life. We don't know what Paul's thorn was. That seems to be purposeful, so all of us can relate to it in different ways. But it is something in Paul's life that is weakening him. And God is going to go out of his way to say, through that thorn, Paul, through this weakness, which ironically came from a messenger of Satan, it didn't come from God. But in and through that weakness, my strength will be made perfect. Jesus' cross. Can you think of a greater picture of weakness? Nakedness, bloody pulp of a man, submitted, surrendered, nailed to 2 pieces of wood. It's weakness. And out of that weakness, the greatest strength that has ever been delivered in all of history came forth. God delivers his strength, reveals his power in and through weakness. Over and over and over again, this pattern is shown. For us, we need to accept the pattern. We need to recognize that this is God's chosen way. He ordained it this way. He decided ahead of time and said, that is my method. And we fight it, just to be honest. I mean, I have the same instincts you do to say, God, could you make me strong? If I was strong, have you ever had this thought? Make me one of those billionaires in this generation. And then I can have a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of power, and I can utilize that power and those riches for your glory. He goes, interesting idea, Eric. No. In other words, God doesn't play that game. Instead, he oftentimes takes the little money we do have away. And we're like, God, I don't have anything in my account. He goes, perfect. Now I can show you who's in charge of your life and how my power and provision work. In other words, he doesn't mind us being weak. He will purposely establish us in situations that are harder so that he can grow us stronger, and so that through our life, not just our life would witness it, but all around us would see how God's strength is proven through weakness. Matthew 9:9. This is just a statement, just to see God's pattern. This is the language of heaven being communicated. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax office. And he said to him, "Follow me." So he arose and followed him. Now, on the outside, if that's all you knew and you didn't know anything more, you'd be like, okay, what's that illustration? This is a Jewish tax collector working for the Romans. See, that still doesn't make any sense to some of you. That is like the scourge in Jewish society. There is nothing lower than that. This is the lowest of the lowest scum. And Jesus comes by and says, I'd like to use that right there. I would like to use you to reveal my glory. Me? The weak one? The one that can't even face his fellow Jews? You. Who's writing this book? Who's giving this revelation? Who's showcasing the glory of God and the power of God? That very man, the tax collector. God chose weak things through which to reveal his gospel glory. Evidence right there. Being a shepherd. Now, for us, especially those of us that didn't grow up around shepherding, in our mind, shepherding is a rather noble task. I mean, after all, David was a shepherd, and he's like sort of our hero in the Old Testament. Jesus refers to himself as a shepherd, the good shepherd that laid down his life for his sheep. I mean, hey, we like this guy. We like shepherds. However, shepherds are a symbol throughout history of weakness, lowliness. So I'm going to say the lowliest occupation. If you could pick the lowliest occupation in the culture in which the Bible is being written, it is shepherding. And which is sort of, I don't know if you'd call that offensive to our souls, because it's like, hey, don't say that about shepherding. Shepherding's noble. But I'm not even going to argue that. I actually think it's rather noble. I can see the revelation of the kingdom of heaven in and through shepherding. That's why David was a shepherd for us. We're going to see how he is prepared to be a king. That's why Jesus is referred to as a shepherd. And we recognize his preparations to be the King of Kings. You see, shepherding is a humble task. And it is an outward focused task. If you're going to be a good shepherd, you have to consider your sheep, in a strange sense, is more valuable than you. You have to live that way, where you're ready to lay down your life for your sheep. And who wants this task? I mean, none of us, right? We don't want to be shepherds. We don't want to have the lowliest task. Smith's Bible Dictionary, in Israel, the shepherd held a subordinate position. This is a quote I've given often over the years. Genesis 46:34. Every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. Egypt is, we could even call it the world. That's actually how it's used in the Bible. It's the world system. And that is a great statement. Every shepherd is an abomination unto the world, right? Whatever position this is lowly. This is frowned upon. It is socially, politically incorrect. And that's what I'm saying. I'm setting you guys up for something. I mean, this is an amazing story that we're going to get into today. The big announcement. Well, that's the name of this whole message. Who would you pick to be the ideal audience? So we're about to get to the Wright Brothers' big announcement of flight, where they're going to go public and they're going to make it known. But let's imagine that we had a big announcement in our life. Like it was huge. Like you had discovered flight and you wanted to make it known. There's a lot of different news outlets that you could pick from today. You know, there's some fake news outlets that you might, say, not necessarily them. How about this guy or this guy? This guy has a podcast. I think he has a good following. We go through this. I don't think any of you would choose who the Wright brothers are going to choose. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think any of you, when God is coming to make his big announcement that the Messiah has come, are going to choose who God's going to choose. What God chooses is so different than the way we work, but we need to notate that. We need to recognize that his means of spreading his good news is different than the way we oftentimes think. So I'm just going to read through it. I know this is like oftentimes associated with Christmas. This is profound. Just listen to it in the lens of what I'm saying, as far as choosing the weak things through which to reveal your strength. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said one unto another, "Let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us." And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Now when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all those that heard it marveled at those things which were told them by the shepherds. Who was God's delivery vehicle? Who did he make the big announcement through? You've got to be kidding. Shepherds? He took the lowest rung. Everyone knew it was the lowest rung. He took the lowest and he said, "It's for them. I want them to carry it." We need to recognize how profound that is. He chose that. I don't know that any of us strategically, if we were a think tank and we got together of how we could best reach the world for Christ, are going to pick the lowest rung and say, let's give it to them. Let's use the intellectual. Let's use the well-spoken. Let's use those that already have a social media connection, the influencers. This is how everyone thinks today. Marketing 101. If you're going to win an election, you have to know how to do this. If you're going to build your business, you have to know how to do this. Does God not study these things? Does he not understand that what he is doing isn't the way it works? You see, God doesn't model himself after the world system. He has his own system. The question is, which system do we believe and agree with? Because most of us get caught up in a world's system and we pattern and mimic a world system instead of saying, God, I want to do it your way. And then we look at a story like this, we're like, wait a minute, God, we need to discuss this. This just doesn't seem wise. Why would you go to them? They are the mouthpiece of heaven. They are the ones that are bringing the message. Not to mention, then he's going to pick 12 rather sketchy characters. Fishermen, again, another lowly profession. Tax collectors, need I say more? And he's like, you guys, go and say what you know to be true. You go and tell them about the resurrection. You know, and not to mention the fact that even before the disciples heard about the resurrection, do you know who heard first? Who the big announcement was made to first? A whole bunch of Marys. Mary, the name itself means rebellious. Who is the first one to hear false doctrine from the serpent? Eve. God is rectifying something, and he's going to Mary's. And just like that first tree, where Eve is then going to take it to Adam, what are you going to see in the gospel? God's going to say, let's make this right. I'm going to give it to the woman, and I'm going to say, the same command, go. Go and tell the apostles. Isn't that an amazing thought that the messenger to the apostles were women? Again, low rung. Now, don't take that as an offense, ladies. I'm just saying that culturally speaking, you got shepherds, you got tax collectors, you have fishermen, and you have women. This is a bad collection here, guys. If we're going to change the world, we need to think this through. I think he thought it through, guys. I think God knows what he's doing. Introducing Amos Root. Even the guy's name is sort of unimpressive. I'm just going to be honest with you. You know, the B-man of Ohio is what he's known as. Again, that's still not impressive to me, okay? There is nothing about this guy that I am going to stand up and go, that is one of the most amazing men in his generation. At the same time, I have a deep love for this guy, and you will too. Just sort of being around him and hearing the stories, you can almost picture like you know him. I don't know. I can't say who you guys know and who you've been around, but I can sort of see this guy. Like, I've known this guy. Okay, I never actually met this guy, but I've known people like him. He's sincere. He's genuine. He's very passionate, very interested. And he wants to see others succeed. He wants anything he has, he'll give it to you. And so he's interested in any discovery, any ideas, like one of the first guys in Ohio to get an automobile. And then he drives it around everywhere and then writes in his publication, which I will explain to you in just a second, about all of his experiences and where he goes, because no one had ever done this stuff before. And so he wants to share everything. Amos Root, the B-man of Ohio. If you're going to pick someone to be your megaphone, to be the one to introduce to the world your accomplishment, there is not anything in me that is going to think Amos Root, the B-man of Ohio. So here's Amos Root. I really like him. Really nice guy. This is his publication, which is going to go down in history, not because it was necessarily some profound publication, but it is the first publication that is going to be used. The Wright brothers are going to endorse it. This is the means the Wright brothers are going to allow for the announcement of their great accomplishment. This is the name of it: Gleanings in Bee Culture. I honestly not think of anything lower. Anything. I mean, maybe gleanings from trash work. You know, it's just like, what are you? I'm serious. This is the vehicle that the Wright brothers chose and accepted for making the big announcement of their accomplishments. David McCullough says it this way in the Wright Brothers, in his book, The Wright Brothers. That same September, this is 1904, 200 miles to the northeast in Ohio, a small elderly gentleman set off in his automobile, as he had before earlier in the summer, for Huffman Prairie on invitation from the Wrights to come see the progress they were making. He was Amos Ives Root of Medina, a town just south of Cleveland. Always neatly dressed, his short white beard trimmed, he stood no more than 5'3". But his energy and curiosity were great indeed. His bright hazel eyes seemed to miss nothing. Don't you feel like you know this guy? David McCullough continues. He was also deeply religious, a Sunday school teacher, an active supporter of the temperance movement, and he enjoyed conveying his thoughts and ideas on these and a host of other topics in the column he wrote for the Root Company's Beekeepers' Trade Journal, Gleanings in Bee Culture. It was to be he, of all people, the Ohio bee-man, who would recognize, as no one yet had, the genius of the Wrights and the full importance of their flying machine. That is a remarkable statement. This, still to this day, is one of the greatest achievements. What the Wright brothers did is one of the greatest achievements of all world history. And no one can see it at this time. Who can see it? Amos Root. Amos Root can see it. He is not a proud man. He's a very humble man. But what he does with excellence. And if he's going to teach people about beekeeping, he is going to teach people the best there is to know about beekeeping. This is who the Wright brothers trusted. He would describe in detail, speaking of Amos Root, what he saw happen at Huffman Prairie, and further, he would describe it accurately. It was not the Dayton papers that finally broke the story, or the Chicago Tribune, or the New York Times, or Scientific America, but Amos Root's own Gleanings in Bee Culture. Who do the Wright brothers trust? Amos Root. So I want to stop there because there's a spiritual principle just sort of staring at us on the screen right now. Who does God trust with his message? He trusts Amos Root, guys. What is Amos Root? He's a humble man. What he does with excellence, but he's not trying to be famous. He just does what he does with excellence. He wants to live well for his God. He's a shepherd. He's a small guy, if you want to say it that way. And yet, he's a small guy done well. He's the way all of us should be, technically. Who do the Wright brothers trust? Amos Root. So here's a letter from Amos Root to the Wright brothers in February of 1904. Remember, their discovery, their breakthrough is going to be December 17th, 1903. So Amos Root somehow knows about this, but remember, there's this huge movement to call it into question, to doubt it. Amos Root is going to cut through that fog, sort of like the two thieves on the cross. There's one that's mocking, the other one's like, I need to be saved. And I believe that you are a king. So this is Amos Root writing to the Wright brothers. I hope you will excuse me, friends, for the liberty I take in addressing you. Let me say briefly that I have all my life had an idea in my head that a flying machine should be made on the principle of flying a kite. Now, I think I put this in parentheses because this isn't an exact quote. This is a summary of a section. If I am able to visit and see what you are doing, I promise never to, now we're back to the quote, undertake to borrow any of your ideas. So this is how it started. And then the Wright brothers are going to communicate back with them saying, well, we're rebuilding our flyer, because their previous one was destroyed, a wind gust in December 17th, 1903. Now they're rebuilding with new ideas, and we'll let you know when we're ready to test it. So then in May, so that was February, this is May, Amos Root is really struggling because he can't wait. He just really wants to see this, and the Wright brothers are taking forever. So he writes another one. Please excuse me, friends, but I am so anxious to see that airship, I can hardly sleep nights. David McCullough says it this way. So let me, because I'm skipping over a lot, but Amos Root is actually going to go out there in July, I believe it was. And this is when there's failure after failure after failure. And what's interesting is even in the light of failure, he can see through it. Everyone else has given up saying, yeah, these guys are a joke. He can see through it. And he's like, these guys have it. It's just a matter of practice. So Amos Root is going to gain a place of trust because in the midst of when everyone else is rejecting them, he's like, I have never seen anything like this. And all he witnessed was crash, crash, crash. But he's like, you guys have it. I see it. They know what they're doing. And yet the Wright brothers swear him to secrecy, which is driving him crazy because he's a talker. And so it's the first time he's ever had to hold a secret. And he's like ready to burst, which is part of the humor. I wish I could go into that because it's one of my favorite things, but it was just too long. It was like, I have to trim this down. But that's one of my favorite things about Amos Root. He's just like, let me tell it. Let me say it. Let me shout it from the rooftops. So David McCullough says it this way. In the second week of September came word from the Wrights that he should return without delay. He reached Dayton on Tuesday, September 20th, 1904. The day Wilbur would attempt something never done before in the history of the world. He would fly a power machine in a complete circle. This is like my comparison with the day the shepherds are going to receive an announcement, right here. I mean, this is like huge. It's like, who's invited? You know that there's one guy invited to this? One guy. Now, there was Orville, who was there, and Charlie Taylor, who was there, who's their mechanic, who's just always there, right? Which we've even likened. There's the three. I've even likened Charlie Taylor to being sort of a symbol of like how the Holy Spirit works, right? And so you have your three, and then one guy, Amos Root. This is a huge day, guys. This is actually possibly the biggest day in flight, even though I'm not going to decry December 17th, 1903. Right here. And Amos Root is there. Still recovering from his crash in August. Obviously, I didn't cover that. Orville got a little banged up. Orville would be on the sidelines watching with Root and Charlie Taylor. Apparently, no one else was on hand at Huffman Prairie. I don't know if you guys feel the loneliness to that, but what these guys have done is so spectacular. And if you followed the series, you know that. It's like, wow, they're risking their life every time they do this. and they have mockery, they have ridicule, they have total disinterest. Everyone has classified them as cranks, kooks. And yet Amos Root sees through all of that fog, and they trust him. And they invite him into this intimate moment, ironically a moment that could be shared with the world, but the world isn't interested at present. But Amos Root is. I don't know about you guys, but I want to be invited to those sorts of moments in the kingdom of heaven. And you can sometimes wonder, it's like, would I be invited? Like the Mighty Men scene, when who gets to be with David in the cave of Adullam? I want to be with Jesus in his cave. I don't want to just be hanging out with Saul. I want to be with Jesus in the cave. And I want to have the privilege of overhearing his longing when he says something like, "Oh, for a cup of water from the well of Bethlehem." What'd you say? You see, it's only those that are in that intimate place, that are there September 20th, 1904, that hear, that see, that witness. But you have to be an Amos Root to be invited. You have to have a childlike faith. You have to be willing to be more simple and not so complex. You have to be willing to be humble and to trust that God knows what he's doing, and you simply take him at his word. So I'm going to read this quote again. Still recovering from his crash in August, Orville would be on the sidelines watching with Root and Charlie Taylor. Apparently no one else was on hand at Huffman Prairie. The big announcement, January 1st, 1905. Now there is like a little backstory to Amos Root nearly bursting, blood vessels, desirous to share this because he witnessed it and he can't speak about it. And it's driving him crazy. And so in the meantime, the Wright brothers say, "You write up your article." And he's going to send it to the Wright brothers. They're going to approve the article. And I was actually going to read the entire article. Unfortunately, it's just too long. Yeah, I know. You guys could still read it. It's not like you're prohibited from reading the original article. It's totally available. And so I'm just going to read you, a couple snippets from it. But it really is humorous. Like even the lead-in, what he says before the article, it's like he has this article before the article of how hard this was to keep this. And that here he is like on Christmas, and he's ready to give a gift to the world. And it was entrusted to him. It's really not even his to give, but for whatever reason, he has the privilege of giving. Just think about the profundity of that. Christmas, a gift. And it's not even a gift that he gave, but it's a gift that he gets the privilege of giving. I mean, you can't even come up with this stuff, and it's just like staring at me as I go through these stories. It's like, does anyone else see that? That is amazing. Amos Root is the one entrusted to bring this message to the world, and he can't wait to do it. And January 1st, the next time he has a publication date, his message comes out in the all-powerful Gleanings from Bee Culture publication. January 1st, 1905. So here's just a couple snippets. God in his great mercy has permitted me to be at least somewhat instrumental in ushering in and introducing to the great wide world an invention that may outrank electric cars. It's funny how we interpret electric cars. Electric cars is something very different back then. The automobiles, and may fairly take a place beside the telephone and wireless telegraphy. When Columbus discovered America, this is Amos Root continuing, he did not know what the outcome would be, and no one at that time knew. And I doubt if the wildest enthusiast caught a glimpse of what really did come from his discovery. In a like manner, these two brothers have probably not even a faint glimpse of what their discovery is going to bring to the children of men. No one living can give a guess of what is coming along this line. Much better than anyone living could conjecture the final outcome of Columbus's experiment when he pushed off through the trackless waters. Possibly we may be able to fly over the North Pole, even if we should not succeed in tacking the stars and stripes to its uppermost end. It's a really cool article, guys, and I highly encourage you to read it because he is going to describe how they do it. He is going to describe even the mystery of it. Like, I don't understand how they even do this. And I've been watching it this whole time. They have discovered things that no other human has ever discovered. And they have done it scientifically. It's not just random guesswork. These men are actually brilliant. You may deem them kooks, but these guys are smarter than us all. It's a great article, all right? The Wright brothers chose Amos Root to be their spokesman. Now, I don't know if that catches you funny. Two of the most famous men in world history, Wilbur and Orville Wright, had been rejected by the mainstream, had been considered a kook by all the intelligentsia of the day, and yet one man, one humble man that kept bees and taught others how to keep bees, saw value in what the Wright brothers were doing, and therefore gained trust in and amongst the Wright brothers, and he was invited in to a key moment in history and was a personal witness to the profound breakthrough. Wilbur is going to take off and do an entire complete circle and come back and land where he started. And you can hear the angel choir, except there's only one witness, Amos Root. Only one guy is hearing it. So what does he need to do? He needs to share it. He needs to proclaim it through his amazing publication, Gleanings from Bee Culture. Likewise, God has called us. We are the ones commissioned to bring the big announcement to this world. I want to be an Amos Root, and I think you guys do too. It's funny how we want to get smarter than an Amos Root. We want to get cooler than an Amos Root. We want to have a publication a little better titled than Amos Root's Gleanings from Bee Culture. God, could you call me to something other than keeping bees? Because that just doesn't translate well to the world. You could imagine the shepherds thinking the same. Something other than like keeping sheep, God? Or catching fish, God? Come on, this isn't going to translate well. They're not going to take me seriously. God says, I want you. I keep bees. I want you. I keep sheep. You're perfect. I catch fish. Oh, wonderful. God, in his brilliance, has chosen weak things. It is ordained beforehand that out of the weakest things, he is going to demonstrate his power. It's high time we as the Church of Jesus Christ accept that his ways are the only ways that work. So instead of trying to be strong in ourselves, instead of trying to prove to the world that we are all that, let's make sure we recognize the whole secret of this is proving that he is all that. And the way to do that is to accept our weakness, to accept that we are clayish, to accept that we can't do this in our own. But he delights to move in and do it. And if anything good comes out of your life, you know where to point to. This wasn't me. I'm not the one that learned how to fly. I'm merely the guy that gets to tell you about it. Amos really wishes he was the one that discovered it, right? But he's not, and he readily acknowledges that. I don't know why I get the privilege of telling you, but that's my privilege. The Wright brothers have decided that they're not going to write their own publications. They're not going to write an article for the New York Times, the Chicago Tribune. They've given that job to me. It's my great privilege to tell the world what the Wright brothers have done. It's our great privilege to tell the world what Jesus Christ has done. 1 Corinthians 1, 27 through 29, God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. And the base things of the world and the things which are despised God has chosen. And the things which are not to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in his presence. He will limit our armies to 300. He will allow us to be weakened. He will allow us to endure seasons with thorns in our side. He will allow us to be mocked and ridiculed. I know this is really hard. This is a hard doctrine to understand, guys. At the same way as he himself submitted, that he himself was reviled, mocked, ridiculed, that he invites us into this place. It's like, well, there's nothing good that's going to come out of that place. I don't want to go into that place. It's called a fellowship of suffering. He says, will you join me here? Will you join me? Because in this place of weakness, strength is made perfect. Final thought, guys, the bewildering pattern. Weakness is God's chosen way to make known his strength. So when we recognize our weakness, that's a huge movement in our souls. When we think we're all that, when we want the world to think we're all that, when we want everyone to be impressed with us, in a sense, we're hindering God's strength from being made evident in our life because we're trying to show our strength. But when we're willing to accept, first of all, our native weakness, that in and of ourselves we can do nothing, and that doesn't mean nothing in the sense of I can't stand up, walk, I can't drink, I can do things in a physical sense. I can't do anything of a heavenly sense. I can't do anything according to my original design. I was designed to reveal the kingdom of heaven. I was designed to bear the heavenly fruit of God: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I was designed to exhibit the profound nature of who God is, that the world could know him by watching me. I can't do that. I am unable to do that in and of myself. And when I accept that innate weakness, and I say, yeah, I suffer from that, Lord. But I know your design is not to have me in my own power, my own grit and determination do this. But I accept that in my weakness, your strength will be made perfect. You have chosen this vessel, this weak vessel, through which to reveal your strength. I accept your pattern. This is bewildering. Weakness is God's chosen way to make known his strength. Father, I pray that our eyes would be open to see this, to accept this, to agree with this pattern, to embrace it with joy, to celebrate it, that this is good, which is why we can consider it pure joy when we face trials of many kinds. Lord, it's in and through these difficulties in our life, in and through these weakening moments, that the greater revelation can come through, that the power of Christ can be revealed. So, Lord, do this in us. We love you and we trust you, Lord. Amen.